Hi everyone, welcome to Graciellie Makes Cards. Today's card features a new release by Graciellie Design, Faraway Hugs. This digital stamp set includes a floral image and many really beautiful sentiments. I chose the sentiment that resonated with me. It's the little things that matter most. I began this card by printing a number of images on Canson mixed media paper. I wasn't exactly sure about the design of the card, but I did know that I wanted to use a watercolor technique, wet on dry. The paint is applied to dry paper. I'm using a number of colors ranging from pink to purples. After dropping in color, I dry it completely before I proceed to the next color. Some of the layers of color are just dropped in, whereas others focus more on developing the shadow areas for dimension in the flower. Because not a lot of water is used, it dries quickly and I'm able to move from one color to the next fairly quickly. I use my heat tool to dry between the layers. This is one of those techniques that you have to just trust the process. In the beginning, it looks rather messy, but as you start building up your colors, it starts to take on some depth and richness. After I completed the layer using rose, I dried it and then created a wash using lemon yellow. I dropped this wash of color into all the highlight areas. I liked the additional warmth that this tone brought to the flower. After the wash was dry, I used Payne's Gray to provide more definition between the petals and deepen those shadow areas. After adding a little bit of color to the center of the flower, I then turned my attention to the leaves. Using the same technique, wet on dry, I dropped in 3 different greens: forest green, deep green, and green yellow. When the leaves were complete, I went back to the flower and added in some more rose tones. When the painting was complete, I fussy cut the images. I also did some simple flower shaping. Unfortunately, I did not turn my camera on, so that is not filmed for you. But I wanted to add some enhanced dimension to the flower. I created an ink-blended background using Distress Oxide Wilted Violet on Bristol Smooth cardstock. I worked diagonally across the panel, lessening my pressure as I applied the ink. The stenciling was done in the same way, so the darker tone would appear on one corner, working towards a lighter tone in the other. After I let my background completely dry, I lined up the stencil again and inked with Versamark ink. The panel was embossed with Wow Clear Sparkle embossing powder. It did take some time melting all that powder, but the sparkly effect was worth it. I also inked the sentiment panel with Versamark ink and coated it with the same embossing powder. The background panel was die cut with a fine frame die. At the same time, I cut a fine frame out of white glitter paper. I taped the white frame to the outer portion of the panel before attaching it to my card base. When I have the fine frame sitting snug against the outer portion, I use some white glue to attach it. The inner die cut panel is mounted on white sheet foam to add some dimension. I find that when I'm using a liquid adhesive with white sheet foam, it does take a while to dry and can slip, so I leave the panel to dry with some weight on it. The small sentiment panel is also attached to sheet foam and trimmed. After the elements were attached to the base, I use Nouveau clear glitter drops to add some shine to the center of the flower and the edges of the petals. I finished up the card by adding a few lilac-colored crystals around the flower and the sentiment. That completes this card featuring Graciellie Design's new release, Faraway Hugs. If you are watching this video on YouTube and enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. If you are viewing it on my website at www.bonniecarolee.com, I really love reading your comments. Thank you so much for your visit.